It was supposed to be a perfect family gathering to celebrate Theo's latest business triumph. We hosted an extravagant dinner party at our mansion, sparing no expense on the decorations or five-star catering. I had spent weeks planning every detail to make it an evening to remember. As our guests arrived, I put on my brightest smile and warmly greeted them. The Ballard couples, John and Amanda, Rick and Stacy, they had been Theo's friends and loyal investors for years. His cousin Marcus also showed up, looking dapper as always in his perfectly tailored suit. "You've truly outdone yourself, Lila," Amanda gushed, admiring the floral centerpieces and designer place settings. "Everything looks exquisite." I beamed with pride, eager to play the role of the flawless hostess with the mostess. Presentation was everything in our social circle. We had to keep up appearances, no matter what was going on behind closed doors. As the evening progressed, the wine flowed freely and laughter filled the air. Theo stood at the head of the table, regaling our guests with stories of his latest business exploits. I watched him with adoring eyes, hanging on his every word, or so it seemed. After dessert was served, Theo excused himself to take an important call from an overseas client. I began clearing the dishes when I overheard hushed voices coming from the study. That's when my world came crashing down. "Can you believe Lila bought into all this?" "Hook, line, and sinker," Theo chuckled. "She's so desperate to keep up her perfect housewife act, she doesn't see what a pathetic joke our marriage has become." My heart pounded as I immediately recognized the other voice. It was Marcus. Of all people to be mocking me behind my back, his betrayal stung the worst. We had been such close friends before Theo swept me off my feet. "You can't keep stringing her along forever, man," Marcus warned. "This crazy party to celebrate a deal that doesn't even exist yet? It's all going to blow up in your face eventually." "A deal that doesn't exist?" My mind raced as I tried to make sense of their hushed discussion. "Don't you get it? I've got the perfect patsy all lined up," Theo sneered. "When my investors realize I mishandled their funds, I'll just blame it all on Lila's incompetence with the household accounts. She'll be left with nothing while I ride off into the sunset with my mistress." The blood drained from my face as the harsh truth washed over me. Our entire marriage, the family I thought we had, it was nothing but a sham constructed from Theo's endless lies. In that moment, I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. That night, I cried myself to sleep, mourning the death of my idyllic fantasy. But as the weight of Theo's betrayal sank in, a newfound determination took root. If he thought I would just be a willing scapegoat for his crimes, he was sorely mistaken. From that night on, things would never be the same between us. His deceit had broken the sacred vow of our marriage. I would make sure Theo paid dearly for every single lie. After that fateful night, I could barely look Theo in the eye without feeling disgusted. I had to force myself to go through the motions, putting on an act like the perfect wife while inwardly seething with rage and resentment. Theo didn't suspect a thing. His arrogance was so great that he assumed I was just the clueless, devoted housewife he could easily manipulate. Little did he know, I spent every spare moment investigating the extent of his deceit. I started by discreetly tracking his credit card statements and bank accounts. The evidence was damning. Lavish expenses at high-end hotels, thousands funneled to an offshore account I knew nothing about. But it was the jewelry store charges that made my blood boil. That lying snake was buying gifts for his mistress with our family's money. "Working late at the office again?" I asked one night in a sugary sweet tone, hiding my disgust as Theo waltzed in way past midnight reeking of cheap perfume. He simply nodded, not even bothering to make eye contact as he brushed past me towards the bedroom. I thought I might be physically ill watching this man I had once loved and trusted become such a vile, reprehensible creature right before my eyes. During his extended business trips, when I knew he was really jaunting off with his mistress, I dug deeper into his computer and email records. I discovered documentation of shady deals, insider trading, money laundering. You name it. He had his grubby hands in it. No wonder he needed someone to blame when it all inevitably fell apart. The final straw was when I uncovered a secret email exchange between Theo and his mistress, whose name was apparently Jessica. Their messages dripped with contempt, mocking me as the pathetic housewife who knew nothing about her husband's business. I read in horror as they discussed letting me take the fall for Theo's criminal activities so they could stay together without any messy divorce proceedings. "Just imagine it, Jess," Theo wrote with a sickening laugh emoji. "I'll be able to leave that money-sucking leech of a wife without losing a penny. Then we can finally be together without her holding us back." Holding him back? After everything I had sacrificed to support his career and tend to our family over the years, that was how he saw me? An expendable liability to be cheated and discarded? The audacity of his words made my vision go red. In that moment, I knew there was no other choice. I would bring that deceitful monster down if it was the last thing I did. He didn't deserve a single ounce of my pity or mercy, not after conspiring to ruin my life in every way imaginable. I began methodically gathering evidence, detailed financial records, incriminating emails, secret phone recordings, everything I could get my hands on to expose Theo as the irredeemable criminal he truly was. With the truth on my side, I was going to dismantle his entire vile scheme from the inside out. When the time was right, he would pay for every sin. The day of reckoning was coming, and I would be the one delivering brutal justice with no mercy. That was a promise. As the weeks went by, I continued gathering intelligence on Theo's misdeeds, piecing together the enormity of his betrayal. The more I uncovered, the sicker I felt. He had been lying and cheating on me for years, right under my nose. One night, I overheard him on the phone making suspicious arrangements. Quietly creeping up behind him, I managed to catch a few damning sentences. "Yeah, that party is going to be the perfect cover. While everyone's being wined and dined, we'll have everything in place to make my exit clean." My heart dropped. He was referring to the upcoming gala we were hosting to celebrate the success of his latest business deal. The same deal I now knew was entirely fraudulent. This festive event was merely an elaborate smokescreen for his true intentions. I moved in closer, holding my breath, desperate to catch more details of his nefarious plot. "Don't worry, my dear. That foolish wife of mine doesn't suspect a thing," he continued with a menacing cackle. "She'll be too busy playing the obedient trophy homemaker while I leave her holding the bag on all my bad dealings. A few forged documents here, some misappropriated funds there, and she'll be the next Martha Stewart by the time I'm through." My blood boiled hearing him so casually discuss framing me for his crimes. He was going to use this party as a public stage for his performance, celebrating fake business success with all of our friends and colleagues looking on. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, he would finalize his escape with his mistress Jessica, leaving me bankrupt and utterly disgraced. As the realization hit me, my shock quickly turned into a burning rage. How dare he try to turn me into a criminal patsy after everything I had sacrificed for our family, our life together? He was going to pay for this unforgivable betrayal. I would make sure of it. The very next morning, I put a plan into motion. While Theo was at the office, I pulled moving trucks up to our mansion and started emptying out every asset of value. Artwork, jewelry, family heirlooms, all of it went straight into a secured storage unit. "What the hell is going on here?" Theo shouted, storming through the front door and seeing a flurry of movers hauling our belongings away. I spun around and looked him dead in the eyes, no longer feeling the need to hide my contempt. "Surely you didn't think I was going to sit idly by while you tried to destroy my life, did you, Theodore?" His face turned beet red with anger. "You stupid little housewife! How dare you undermine me?" I stood my ground, undeterred. "I know all about your plans to frame me, dear husband. The fraudulent business deals, the secret accounts, even your tacky mistress named Jessica. You're going to be prematurely celebrating at that gaudy party of yours, because it will be the last time you ever get to put on an act of success at my expense." Seething, Theo raised his hand to strike me. But I didn't flinch. I was utterly past the point of fear. Before he could act on his rage, I turned on my heel and strode away without another word, leaving him fuming in stunned silence. From that point on, I worked tirelessly with unwavering determination. By the time his little gala rolled around, I would have everything situated to deliver the ultimate dose of karma. No more games, no more lies, just the brutal, honest truth that would bring Theo's life crashing down all around him. After my explosive confrontation with Theo, I felt more alone than ever. My friends and family had been kept in the dark about his affairs and criminal dealings. I had no one to confide in or rely on as I prepared my counterattack. That's when an unexpected ally emerged from the shadows of my past. Marcus. We had been close friends before I met Theo, but slowly drifted apart over the years as I became consumed with being the perfect wife and mother. Still, I knew deep down that Marcus always harbored feelings for me that went beyond friendship. A few days after the moving truck incident, there was a knock at my door. I cautiously opened it to find Marcus standing on my doorstep, a look of concern etched across his handsome face. "Lila, I heard about the blow-up with Theo. What's going on?" he asked, letting himself inside. "You know you can trust me." I felt my defenses start to crumble as I broke down, finally allowing myself to open up to someone about Theo's unforgivable betrayal. The floodgates opened as I recounted every painful detail, the affairs, the financial crimes, his plans to let me take the fall for everything. Streams of tears rolled down my cheeks, but Marcus didn't judge or try to interject. He simply listened intently, nodding along as the extent of Theo's treachery became clear. When I finished, Marcus's brow furrowed in anger. "That lying bastard. I always knew he was nothing but a slimy con man who didn't deserve you." His blunt assessment surprised me, but I appreciated his honesty. Wiping my tears, I looked him squarely in the eye. "Well, now the whole mask is off, and I'm going to make him pay for it all at his little circus gala in front of God and everybody." For a moment, Marcus almost looked impressed by my newfound defiance. Then his expression turned serious. "Whatever you've got planned, you know I'm going to do everything I can to help make it happen. Just say the word." Part of me wanted to maintain my sense of prideful independence. But after being so alone through this nightmare, having Marcus's loyalty and support meant more than I could put into words. I gave a resolute nod. "Okay then, here's what we need to do." Over the next few weeks, Marcus became my strategic partner and confidant, assisting with essential preparations for the main event. He coordinated discreetly moving my assets and evidence into secure holding locations. He arranged private investigators to closely monitor Theo's movements and communications, ensuring I had the latest intelligence. To keep up appearances, I still played the role of the dedicated housewife, patiently putting up with Theo's constant condescending remarks and sidelong glances, wondering what I was up to. All the while, my rage simmered inside, fueling my drive to finally bring him down once and for all. The night before the party, Marcus came over to go over the final plans one last time. I was a bundle of nerves, despite my steadfast determination. "You don't have to do this, you know," he said softly, gently squeezing my hand. "We could take all the proof to the authorities, let them handle Theo. You wouldn't have to go through with the public brutality." I shook my head vehemently. "No, it has to be this way. He needs to face the consequences of his actions right in front of everybody who's helped enable his egomaniacal behavior all these years." Marcus could see the intensity burning in my eyes. He didn't question me further. "Fine, we'll do it your way then," he relented. "But I'll be right there by your side through it all. Theo's going to wish he never crossed you by the time this is all over." With Marcus watching my back, I felt an unshakable sense of confidence and purpose. After decades of being pushed around, betrayed, and disrespected by Theo, tomorrow would be a dramatic reversal where I reclaimed my power once and for all. The stage was set. All that was left was to start the show and watch as Theo's life crumbled into ruins of his own making. I could hardly wait to deliver that vile snake his long-overdue consequences. The morning of Theo's disastrous gala arrived with the kind of picture-perfect weather he would have wanted, sunny and mild, without a cloud in the sky to ruin his carefully orchestrated theatrics. I spent the day overseeing the setup and preparation efforts, all while fighting to contain my bubbling fury. Theo had no idea, of course, as he preened around arrogantly, making last-minute demands of the staff, like he was putting on his own personal Oscars ceremony. He oozed smug self-satisfaction, assured that his sordid exit strategy would all finally culminate tonight. "Everything needs to be absolute perfection," he barked at the poor coordinator just trying to do her job. "This party will be the biggest event of the decade, and I simply won't accept anything less than spectacular." I had to purse my lips to avoid laughing out loud at his empty bravado. If only he knew what kind of real spectacle was in store. A few hours before guests were set to arrive, Marcus showed up looking devilishly handsome in a tailored tuxedo. We exchanged a knowing glance, one final confirmation that I was absolutely certain about going through with this very public form of vengeance. No second thoughts whatsoever, I assured him in a low voice, squeezing his arm. He's not going to wriggle his way out of facing justice this time. Marcus gave a solemn nod. All the evidence is prepped and ready to deploy on your signal, just waiting on you to give the fireworks their big debut. His sly confidence buoyed my own sense of anticipatory excitement. After weeks of meticulous preparation, everything was finally falling into place perfectly. As the crowds began streaming in a few hours later, I put on my best fake smile and seamlessly slipped back into hostess mode, greeting Theo's accomplices and our wealthy friends like I was still the perfectly obedient housewife they all expected me to be. "Lila, you've truly outdone yourself." Stacy, one of Theo's biggest investors, gushed as she looked around at the opulent decorations and towering floral centerpieces. "This party is even more breathtaking than we could have imagined." Her superficial praise sickened me, but I did my best not to let it show as I fawned over her and the rest of Theo's phony entourage. These people only cared about depicting success without substance. No wonder Theo had been able to slip so many unscrupulous deals past them over the years. Throughout the evening's dinner and entertainment, I sat back and watched Theo eagerly soak up all the attention and glory, peacocking around like he was the king of the world. A few times our eyes met from across the room, and I could see the slightly perplexed look in his eyes as he processed that I was behaving like a perfectly content, dutiful wife. If only he knew that hidden beneath my composed exterior, a fierce fire was raging. The burning determination to utterly obliterate his ill-gotten life and everything he held dear. I was the eye of the storm that was coming, calmly waiting for the perfect moment to unleash total devastation. At one point during the evening's festivities, Marcus caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod toward the side exit, communicating that all preparations were ready. My heart started pounding as I realized my moment of righteous vengeance had almost arrived. As the main course plates were being cleared, I saw Theo pulling out a comically oversized gavel, getting ready to make some long-winded speech about his latest business triumph. My fingers clenched into fists as I watched him start regaling the crowd with bold-faced lies. That was my cue. Rising from my seat, I shot Marcus a resolute look before marching straight toward the stage, every ounce of fury fueling my steps. The time for games, deceptions, and playing the meek housewife had ended. It was time to bring this charade crashing down once and for all, and I was going to make sure the entire world watched Theo's facade disintegrate into the rubble it deserved to become. As I marched toward the stage, the room suddenly grew hushed, all eyes turning toward me with confused murmurs. Theo stopped mid-sentence, his bravado faltering, as he registered the look of furious determination etched across my face. Well, if it isn't my adoring wife coming to join in on the celebration," he sneered, trying to maintain his false aura of bravado. "Don't you have some housekeeping duties to attend to, dear?" I felt everyone's judgmental stares, wondering what sort of scorned wife spectacle I was about to embarrass myself with. Little did they know, this was going to be a complete role reversal, where Theo was the one suffering unimaginable public humiliation. "Please, don't let me interrupt," I said with an eerie calm, standing directly in front of him now. "I'm sure the guests are just dying to hear about your latest shady business exploit." Theo's eyes narrowed menacingly, but I refused to be intimidated anymore by his domineering presence. Marcus emerged from the back of the room, flanked by two other confident-looking associates, all of them holding laptop computers and thick binders of evidence. My backup team was in position. "You ungrateful, meddling witch," Theo hissed under his breath so only I could hear. "I'm going to make you regret whatever pathetic stunt you're trying to pull here." "No, dear husband," I responded firmly, not breaking eye contact. "The only thing I regret is not doing this years ago when I first uncovered what a lying, cheating, criminal scumbag you really are." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as I unloaded that brutal insult out in the open. A few of Theo's close enablers like Stacy and John immediately jumped to their feet, looking scandalized. But I was just getting started. Everyone here deserves to know the real truth about the kind of fraud and master manipulator they've been idolizing, I declared, whipping around to address the captive audience. This entire evening's lavish spectacle you've all been a part of celebrating, it's all an elaborate fiction funded by illegal activities, underhanded business practices, and stolen money. Before anyone could respond, the screens behind me flashed to life, displaying dozens of images, documents, and damning pieces of evidence Marcus and his team had compiled. Everything from credit card statements showing Theo's affair expenses to records of his under-the-table dealings and offshore bank accounts. A hush fell over the crowd as the gravity of the situation became clear. "You're all a bunch of depraved, greedy monsters just like him!" Stacy cried out, shooting up from her seat with an accusatory finger pointed at me. "How dare you try to sabotage Theo's biggest business triumph like this out of some pathetic, jealous rage?" I simply shook my head, maintaining my cool composure. "Take a look at the evidence for yourself. Stacy, those bank statements showing his multi-million-dollar transfers to an offshore tax haven codenamed Paradise? You really think that's just legit business as usual?" The audible chorus of gasps and furious side chatter was all the confirmation I needed that the partygoers were realizing just how deep Theo's betrayals and deceptions had run. In that moment, seeing his entire sham crumbling down around him, Theo snapped into an incoherent rage. "You ungrateful whore," he shouted, grabbing me by the shoulders and giving me a forceful shake. "I gave you everything. A life of luxury, mansions, cars, anything your greedy heart desired? And this is how you repay me?" I matched his fiery intensity with a look of pure disgust. "I never wanted any of those material things, you oblivious monster. All I wanted was a husband who could see me as a partner, not just some vapid trophy wife there to stroke his ego." Seizing the moment, Marcus rushed in and forcibly pulled Theo off me, while his team continued cycling through even more third-party evidence. Testimony from his mistress, recorded phone calls, the full shocking paper trail of his seemingly endless criminal dealings. As reality violently set in, Theo started to unravel into a blubbering, pathetic mess right there on the stage in front of everyone. I almost felt a twinge of pity watching him crumble so completely, until remembering all the years of torment and betrayal that led to this karmic reckoning. With the stark truth exposed for all to see, there was nowhere left for Theo to run or hide. His legacy of lies, deceit, and exploitation was laid bare. As he wailed like a petulant child, I turned to Marcus with a satisfied smile. "I believe that's a wrap on this charade," I said simply. "Let's go home." The aftermath of Theo's brutal downfall unfolded rapidly like a series of calculated dominoes finally being tipped over. As soon as the shockwaves from my televised exposé started rippling outwards, the consequences came swiftly. Within 24 hours, Theo's investors and business partners had terminated all dealings and affiliations, spooked by the meticulously catalogued evidence of his fraudulent activities. Major banks began cutting off his lines of credit and access to liquid capital. Basically overnight, his entire business empire started crumbling. Marcus's team made sure to leak details and camera footage from the cataclysmic party to all the major news outlets and criminal authorities. Pretty soon, Theo's disgraced face was plastered all over television and the internet, the subject of blistering exposes and accusations of white-collar villainy. The lies, the affairs, the stolen money. I can't believe we were all so blind to his reprehensible behavior for so many years, Stacy railed during one notorious TV interview, tears of anguish and humiliation streaking her face as she recounted being an unwitting accomplice. Some of Theo's sleazier associates, like his cousin Parker, tried distancing themselves, professing ignorance about the extent of his illegalities. Others, like business partner John, flat out turned on him, becoming a celebrated whistleblower in hopes of salvaging what was left of his own tarnished reputation. I always knew there was something a little off about Theo's dealings, but I had no idea it went that deep, John stated in an exclusive interview, trying to depict himself as an anti-hero of sorts. Luckily, his wife Lila had the guts and resourcefulness to finally expose him for the crook he really is before he dragged the rest of us down too. Meanwhile, As Theo found himself being universally vilified by all of elite society, his former mistress Jessica wasted no time throwing him directly under the bus. Photos and recordings of their torrid affair quickly surfaced online, making for a salacious supplementary scandal surrounding the downfall. Theodore Jennings is nothing but a washed-up con man who uses and exploits everyone around him, Jessica seethed during a paid television appearance, crossing her arms defensively. I may have been just another one of his side pieces for a while, but at least I had the dignity to walk away before getting sucked into his vortex of criminal lies. Even Theo's own family rapidly turned their backs on the disgraced pariah. His cousin Marcus, who had been by my side helping to orchestrate the exposure from the beginning, cut ties and any remaining association. Theo's own parents issued a public statement essentially disowning their son as a lost criminal cause. We are utterly ashamed and appalled by the unforgivable actions Theodore has been accused of perpetrating, the statement read. Clearly, he has lost any remaining semblance of honor, integrity, or humanity that we instilled through his upbringing. We stand with the victims and truth-tellers who have bravely brought his dark deceptions into the light. As for Theo himself, he became a complete shell of the formerly boisterous and domineering figure he had pretended to be for so many years. Overnight, he went from an admired industry titan to an unemployable, toxic personality exposed for the deceitful snake he always was behind closed doors. Some of the lowlights of his rapid disgrace included being forcibly evicted from the palatial mansion I had already stripped of all assets, having his car, watches, and other luxury possessions repossessed by jilted creditors and authorities, getting permanently banned from every country club, resort, and members-only establishment we used to frequent, fielding a daily onslaught of humiliating phone calls and emails from former friends, colleagues, and enablers alike, denouncing him, watching helplessly as revelation after revelation about his shady business practices, financial crimes, and infidelity splashed across every news cycle. For a man who had been so obsessed with maintaining a flawless outward image and perception of success, the psychological devastation of this abrupt fall from grace was catastrophic. Left with no funds, no resources, and no allies, Theo was reduced to a paranoid raving derelict, the farthest cry imaginable from the arrogant mastermind who thought he could hurt me and get away with it. As I observed his pathetic, petulant self-destruction from a detached distance, I felt a profound sense of karmic satisfaction. The man who had worked so hard to tear my life apart was now an utterly broken, discarded husk. After so many years suffering under his oppressive thumb, I had emerged the victor while he got to experience true humiliation. Sweet, uncompromising justice had ultimately prevailed. Theo's reign of horrible treachery was over for good, replaced by a well-deserved downward spiral into ignominy. I savored every moment of his agonizing undoing. Chapter 8. Rebuilding. In the aftermath of Theo's cataclysmic downfall, it was finally my turn to pick up the pieces and reclaim my life on my own terms. No more living in the shadow of his lies and deceptions. From now on, I would be the one calling the shots. My first order of business was filing for divorce, a process my attorneys made mercifully expedient given the mountain of evidence we had amassed depicting Theo's egregious patterns of adultery, financial crimes, and cumulative misconduct. The proceedings were a complete undressing, leaving him with nothing as I negotiated a massive settlement that returned full control of the family's remaining assets to me. While Theo descended into a pathetic state of homeless isolation, I got to work transforming what was left of his tarnished business empire into my own renovated vision. Thanks to the extensive documentation Marcus had provided, exposing all of Theo's illegitimate practices, it was relatively straightforward separating and preserving the legitimate components to build back up in an ethical, sustainable manner. My first big move was installing Marcus as the new president and CEO to help steer the company's new direction. After everything he had done helping me take down Theo, I knew Marcus had the integrity, skill, and sincere loyalty I could rely on. "You sure about this, Lila?" he asked me humbly the day I offered him the keys to the castle, almost seeming in disbelief. "There's nobody you'd rather have in charge than the guy who used to be your secret admirer all those years ago?" I smiled and shook my head. Of course, Marcus, ever the gentleman, still felt a little self-conscious about how close we had grown through the entire process. "You've proven yourself to be one of the realest, most trustworthy people in my life," I assured him, taking his hand with a gentle squeeze. "I can't imagine a better person to help make this whole venture finally legitimate after Theo's sleaze contaminated it for so long." With Marcus overseeing day-to-day leadership of the rebounded business operations, I was able to transform my new role into being a more philanthropic, community-facing brand ambassador and spokesperson. My platform was about overcoming adversity, perseverance in the face of deception, and finding true strength through periods of struggle. It was an incredibly cathartic chapter, seeing the looks of awe, admiration, and respect whenever I visited schools or spoke at corporate leadership events. Gone were the days of me being perceived as some vapid trophy wife, only concerned with keeping up appearances. Now I symbolized resilience, determination, and the power of feminine freedom. Whenever we appeared on television broadcasts together to discuss our advocacy work, I could sense a hint of consternation from certain interviewers trying to figure out the nature of my relationship with Marcus after Theo's salacious scandals. Were Marcus and I an item now that the truth about Theo's affair had come out? How long had there been a spark between us? The speculation swirled endlessly. In reality, things between Marcus and I had evolved into a grounded, profoundly loyal partnership founded on our shared commitment to turning my toxic situation into a force for positive change. Were there lingering hints of his old romantic affection for me? Perhaps. But he was far too respectful to ever make me feel uncomfortable in the aftermath of being so brutally betrayed already. We kept things completely professional, presenting a united front as we restored integrity to the business that had been so terribly compromised under Theo's mismanagement. Still, Marcus and I shared a unique, unbreakable bond after the bloodshed. He had been my guardian angel through my darkest hours and helped me reclaim my sense of dignity when all seemed lost. Watching him seamlessly take over executive decision-making and grow the company's philanthropic impact gave me a swell of immense pride and gratitude. Who would have thought the scrawny kid from our college days harboring a not-so-secret crush would one day become the leader helping me rebuild my life from the ashes? As for Theo, once the news stories died down and the defamation lawsuit stopped getting filed, he simply seemed to vanish from existence entirely. Marcus's private investigators reported potential sightings of him as a ranting, raving vagrant pushing a cart of belongings on the streets, a far cry from his formerly prestigious status. After everything he had done, it was a pathetic form of unintentional penance. Part of me wondered if I should feel any twinge of residual emotion, sadness, pity, regret for how badly things had gone off the rails between us, despite my once loving him so devotedly. Vestiges of the bright-eyed, hopeful woman I had been before his betrayals, telling me to have a shred of compassion for the deteriorated, broken monster he had become. But whenever those thoughts arose, I quickly snuffed them out by reminding myself of all the hurt, lies, and deception he had so callously put me through in his endless pursuit of ego and excess. Allowing myself to feel sorry for Theo after everything would be an insult to my own hard-won strength and resilience. So I simply pushed those remnant feelings aside and focused on continuing to grow the remarkable work Marcus and I were doing to transform my personal devastation into a powerful force for positive change in the world. As the phoenix arose from the ashes, reborn and more brilliant than ever before.